Josh Hoover returning at quarterback for the Horned Frogs, and we think that he has some potential to compete for the Heisman Trophy. His stats from last season comparable to Garrett Nussmeier. You might have heard that name before because he's one of the favorites this season, despite Hoover not really getting much traction in the conversation. Now, Hoover did lose a lot of his top wide receivers to the NFL draft, bringing back their number three receiver from last season. And I do think that will maybe help a little bit early on as they have to go on the road to North Carolina. The Tar Heels bringing in the Tar Heels got Bill Belichick in the offseason to be their head coach. There has been some off the field stuff with North Carolina that maybe will affect them early on in the season. But as far as the team goes, they brought in Gio Lopez to be the starting quarterback, most likely for $4 million. I do think that North Carolina is going to have a solid team this season, but early on, even though they're playing at home, I really like Josh Hoover and the Horned Frogs with their experience to be able to pull this one out over a team that maybe is going to struggle just a little bit early on in the season. And then TCU should move to 2-0 very easily over Abilene Christian.
Following week is against SMU, probably their first true test of a team this season, as SMU was a playoff team last year. Kevin Jennings is back at the quarterback position. I think he'll make some strides forward after a successful regular season, but he did look pretty bad against Penn State in their opening round game of the playoffs. SMU has done well in the transfer portal and recruiting through the success of the program last season. But against TCU, I think Josh Hoover is once again going to be able to compete with Kevin Jennings and his experience. It's just going to come down to the defense. And I do think TCU's defense is looking very solid. I think the secondary is looking good, and they've brought in some good transfers for the defensive line. I think TCU at home can pull off the upset over a likely favored SMU team that will compete for an ACC championship. Horned Frogs go to 3-0.
Their next matchup also against a playoff team from last season. And I think this is going to be another really good game, but the difference is it is on the road for TCU this time. Arizona State returning a ton of starters from last year, including Sam Levitt at the quarterback position. The Sun Devils are going to be one of the best teams in the Big 12 this season. And I do believe that this is where TCU will fall for the first time this year to 3-1.
The big reason here is I do think TCU needs to try as hard as they can to make this offense two-dimensional because the run game last year was very, very poor. Granted, they do run an air raid type of offense, probably why Josh Hoover had such amazing stats, but you still need some semblance of a run game to compete against these top teams. And Arizona State, I think, will have a much better run game than TCU, so they will be able to pull off a win at home for the Sun Devils here. Colorado the following week, pretty interesting game. Big story for the Buffaloes is that Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter are off to the NFL, and they were the focal point of this team last year. Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball, and I really don't know what to think of this Colorado team. On the one hand, they still have Deion Sanders as their head coach. They have Caden Salter coming in from Liberty to be their starting quarterback. A lot of potential there. On the other side, I don't know what this defense is going to look like. The weapons that they had last season are, for the most part, gone. This Colorado team is going to look very different. There's definitely going to be some regression. I don't know how big of a regression it will be. All I do know is that I believe TCU will get a win here at home against the Colorado Buffaloes and move to 4-1 before another road trip to face off against one of the toughest teams in the Big 12.
Yeah, really tough that they had to face Kansas State on the road not long after facing Arizona State on the road. This is a really, really good Wildcats team. Avery Johnson back at quarterback. And overall, this should be a shootout. It was a really, really good game when they played back in 2022 in the Big 12 championship. Could be somewhat similar to that this season. Josh Hoover and Avery Johnson are going to go at it. This one should be a really good game, but we're taking Kansas State to drop TCU to 4-2. I think just overall the Wildcats are a little bit better, but that's not to say TCU can't compete in this game. I just think that with these two road trips with Arizona State and Kansas State, the likelihood of them winning even one is pretty low.
It doesn't get much easier the following week against Baylor. They are hosting the Bears here, but Baylor is returning Sawyer Robertson as their starting quarterback, who had a phenomenal season last year. Both their starting running backs from last year, who were a freshman and a sophomore, are also returning. And Josh Cameron, their lead wide receiver, is also back. Baylor has everything pointing in the right direction for this offense. Defensively, they are losing a couple key guys, especially at the linebacker position, but overall are still looking very solid. I think this game, once again, like Jonah was saying for Kansas State, will turn into a shootout very, very quickly. But I think after that Kansas State loss, and if you want to go all the way back to the Arizona State loss as well, TCU needs a big win against one of the better teams in the Big 12. And because the Big 12 is such a chaotic conference, I think they will get one against Baylor here. And after getting a win over the Bears, they will go on the road again to face West Virginia. Definitely their easiest road game thus far, because West Virginia has lost a ton of players to the transfer portal. I believe it is over 50 right now, including about 20 in one day during the spring transfer portal window. I think this West Virginia team is gonna struggle a lot this season with the departure of so many players. It is also their head coach's first season with the program, and they have a new starting quarterback. There's really just nothing going the Mountaineers' way. All they have going for them is the home field advantage, but TCU will be coming off of a huge win against Baylor, and I think they are without a doubt the more talented team. They'll move to 6-2 here before going into their final bye week.
And after that bye week, really, really tough back-to-back games here. The first one is at home, though, against Iowa State. The Cyclones made the Big 12 championship last season before getting blown out by Arizona State, but there was nothing that was going to stop that Sun Devils team from making the college football playoffs. Iowa State is going to be really good once again this season. Rocco Becht returning at quarterback, as well as a lot of other starters across the board. Cyclones will be one of the best teams in the conference again. I think this is going to be a really tough game for TCU, but once again, we are taking the Horned Frogs to win against a top team in the conference.
And the following week is against the final top team in the conference of our Big Four in the Big 12, and that is a road trip to BYU. Now, BYU has Jake Retzlaff returning as their starting quarterback. There are currently some allegations against him, but he is innocent until proven guilty. So are predictions for BYU and any team that plays BYU reflect Jake Retzlaff as their starting quarterback. And with him as their QB, they are a very dangerous team. We saw them start off 9-0 last season before faltering down the stretch and ultimately missing the Big 12 championship game. But they're returning a lot of their offensive and defensive production from last season. Their defense was actually one of the better defenses in the country. And if they can keep that defensive pressure up, then I think BYU has a legitimate case for a Big 12 title run. And I think on the road here, TCU is going to struggle a little bit, especially coming off of that Iowa State win. It's really tough having to play all four of those Big Four teams in the Big 12, and I think they are only going to get one of them this season, dropping the Horned Frogs to 7-3.
Yeah, just a really tough schedule for TCU this year. It lightens up a little bit, though, to end of the season with a road trip to Houston. The Cougars bringing in Connor Weigman out of Texas A&M to be their starting quarterback, and I think he's going to have a pretty solid season. Houston should be able to make a push towards a bowl game this year, but I don't think one of those wins will be TCU. We like the Horned Frogs here to move to 8-3, and then Cincinnati, also a team that's going to make a little bit more of a push towards a bowl game. Brendan Sorsby back at quarterback, and I think that the Bearcats are going to have a decent season. But again, TCU is significantly more talented. Josh Hoover is the better quarterback. I do believe that the Horned Frogs will finish the season 9-3. Our way too early projection was 6.95 wins and 5.05 losses. We had TCU going 9-3 originally, and we have stuck with that prediction, but the projection went up just slightly to 7.05 wins, 5.0 and 4.0 in the Big 12. The floor going to be 6-6 for the Horned Frogs, 4-5 in Big 12 play. Like we were saying, it's a really tough schedule. We took TCU to win the majority of their really tough games. The ceiling going to be 10-2, and I think that this is a really tough ceiling to reach. Just like we were saying, they have so many tough teams on their schedule. Like Connor said earlier, the Big Four: Arizona State, Iowa State, BYU, Kansas State. We also really like Baylor. TCU has to play them as well. It's a super tough schedule. 10-2 would be a miracle, but it is not impossible if Josh Hoover can play up to that Heisman potential that we hinted at earlier in the video. So, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our other schedule predictions, and we will see you in our next video.